through which he introduces even the concept of God in the notebooks. Now, one point which I find needs some emphasis is that why Wittgenstein has uh, made himself less and less inclined towards Schopenhauer in the Tractatus, because his reference to will are only in some cases, in it, two or three cases, in which he talks of will as in the empirical sense is subject matter of psychology, whereas we cannot speak about the will which is the subject of the ethical attributes like good and bad. That means he is making a conscious effort to avoid the concept of a universal will in the Wittgensteinian sense. He's rather pushing the will to a transcendental level, in the sense the subject is transcendental. So the willing subject is also transcendental. So this is a point which we need to consider why he really moved away from the concept of a world will. And second point, which I find it worth mentioning, is Schopenhauer's entire approach to life is the denial of the will. So, in a sense, you can get salvation or liberation from the suffering of the world only by denying the will. If I deny my will, then I also deny the universal will. And in that sense, I will also deny, or I should deny, the world. So, in that sense, his so called pessimism lies in this concept of a denial, which Wittgenstein partially echoes it, but he doesn't talk about denial of the will. Rather, he is affirming the will as a transcendental subject, which is the locus of meaning, locus of ethics, locus of morality. So, in that sense, there is something very significant in Wittgenstein's appropriation of Schopenhauer's ideas. I think Wittgenstein is coming back to his own from this shadow. He's coming out of this shadow of Schopenhauer by suggesting that we can really get out of the suffering of the world, because that was uppermost in his mind, by transcending the world, not denying it, by transcending it, rather by transcending language itself and transcending. That's why the concept of limit of language becomes significant. So I must realize myself as, in a sense, not part of the world, so detached from the world, and I am a limit self. In that sense, I do not necessarily belong to the world. I must be myself. So, in that sense, of course, this becomes clear. One last point which I will draw attention of Professor Friedlander is the two statements which he makes: the world and life are one in the Tractatus, and I am my world within the bracket microcosm, the microcosm. These two statements have to be read along with his statements on solipsism and his statements on will in the Tractatus. Perhaps one can, without advocating the idea that he is a solipsist in the empirical sense of the term, maybe he is solipsist because he says solipsism is the truth. There is truth in solipsism. So there must be some solipsism, but that may not be empirical, the so-called caricatured solipsism in which I alone am real and the world is myself, or I am the world. That will be a caricature. So I think we have to go back to Schopenhauer to understand these two statements. In that sense, we have to say the world is will. World and life are one. So we have to understand that the world and will are the same. So in that sense, still Schopenhauer can help us that the world is a manifestation of the will. And it cannot but be the universal will. Because my will cannot be the world cannot be the manifestation of my individual will. That is not Wittgenstein's concern. That will be purely out of the context of Wittgenstein's way of thinking. Uh, then the statement, I am my world. So the other statement, the world is my world, which is emphasized by Professor Friedlander, world is my world, and I am my world. These two, I think, have to be studied, have to be understood together. So, in that sense, perhaps the notion of will can help us. That is, I am my world, I am my world can only mean that myself, which is a will, or which is a will, is the world, which is a manifestation of the will. So, in that sense, it is not so much a case of parallelism, it is a case of identity. That I, the will, the transcendental will, and the world, transcendentally speaking, are the same. So